I think consent is more of like a vibe. If you feel like my vibe is saying yes, and you're gonna know when a vibe is saying yes and when a vibe is saying no. If I'm letting you touch, if I'm letting you kiss me, that's consent. If I'm not, if I'm stiff and I just have a bad vibe, the consent is no.
To me, consent is a yes or no question. It's more like you have to be very direct with it. You can't just say, do you want to do this? Or are you ready to do this? You have to be specific, and they have to say yes or no.
So my take on consent is, at least for the first few times, I believe there has to be an understanding and a discussion between two, of course, completely unimpaired individuals. When you have impaired judgment, that's kind of out the window altogether. But when you start to get into a relationship with the person, I believe it becomes more of an understanding and less of a discussion. Because if it's always like on a contract, yes or no basis when you're together in an intimate relationship, and maybe I'm biased on this because I've been with my partner for over 5 years, it becomes more of a chore if it's a yes or no and it takes the intimacy completely out of it. So again, when you're starting in a relationship, or maybe even, they have one-time relationships, it should really be a yes or a no. Of course, unimpaired, but further down into the relationship, it should be more of an understanding with your partner and kind of body language and feel it out.
Consent to me it's knowing that somebody wants what you're doing. It's knowing that they are not going to freak out and they're not going to tell you, you have to read their body language, or if they say no, then it means no. And what someone's wearing is not consent. Just because somebody is wearing something that's revealing does not mean they want to have sex with you.
Consent to me just means it's a full understanding and knowledge of what's going on between both halves, be it guy and girl and girl, whatever, it doesn't matter.
I mean, of course, the first couple of times you gotta ask for consent, maybe in like, are you sure kind of form, and then one night stand, of course, ask, are you sure? And if they say yes, then you're good. But if you're under the influence of any type, consent is not possible. You cannot give consent under the influence.
Consent is sort of like treating everybody like a human. Like if you're in a relationship with somebody and like the issue comes up about consent, like what is consent? Consent is doing the right thing and just asking somebody how they feel about a situation before you just like, it's like asking for an opinion before making one.
Consent to me is an agreement between two or more people to do something, regardless of what that is in reference to.
Having someone be okay with something, but them truly being okay with it, without any kind of explanation needed or anything of of that matter, just truth and honesty with it,
So consent is complete understanding and acceptance of the situation you are in, not necessarily always sexual, but in any situation.
What is consent?
By definition, consent is permission for something to happen.
Or agreement to do something.
But what does consent have to do with sex?
Consent can be given through words or actions.
It is not a legally binding document.
Or a formal letter of consent.
It is simply a conversation between people.
It doesn't have to be awkward.
There are many ways to comfortably give consent to your partner or partners.
Or to not give consent.
It can be, I like that.
Or, I don't like that.
Or, let's keep going.
Or, why don't we try something else?
It can be a simple yes or no.
It can be through physical touch.
Pulling someone closer.
Or pushing them away.
There is no textbook answer on how to give consent.
But if you aren't sure how you feel, ask.
You can ask.
Do you like that?
Is this okay?
Should we keep going?
Do you want me to stop?
How do you feel? What do you want to do next?
Open communication makes for a better experience overall.
One thing you can never do is assume someone is consenting when it isn't made clear.
Don't assume that just because they said yes at first, they won't change their mind.
Or that if they consent to one thing means they consent to everything.
Just because you're dating someone or are married to someone, that doesn't mean you automatically have consent from them.
Don't assume that just because you've had sex before with consent means that they want to do it again.
There are some situations where you know your partner can't give consent.
If they are passed out or unconscious.
If they are intoxicated or high.
Consent is not given based on what you are wearing.
Or what you're drinking.
And if you are wondering if your partner is giving consent,
just ask.
The worst the person can say is no.
And if you start the conversation, you can create a more open and comfortable environment for your partner.
and they will be happy that you're caring enough to ask them how they feel.
And you'll feel better knowing where they stand in the situation.
Consent doesn't have to be a scary thing.
It is meant to make everybody in the situation feel more comfortable.
Communication is key.
And it makes for better sex.
So remember,
you have complete control over your body.
And no one else does.
You set the pace.
And your partner will follow.
So, what does consent mean to you?